Welcome to Only One You Need Radio. We're not the only one you need. You are. We just show you how to get out of your own way. With your host, speaker, author, business coach, and consultant, David Dubé.
Welcome to Only One You Need Radio. It's your host, David Dubé. I'm so excited to have you here with me today. Why? Because in this episode, my friend, you and I are going to be discussing emotions. We're going to be discussing not only emotions, but how to deal with emotions, negative emotions in particular. And this, it doesn't matter how low or high the level of emotion is, we're going to talk about dealing with it and why it's so valuable to know this information and to use and utilize it. This is literally life-changing information right here. Absolutely life-altering information. If you've not heard anything that I've talked about before, if this is your first episode here with Only One You Need Radio, go back and listen from at least episode number 2. Number 1 is just me introducing who I am and what this show is really going to be about. And it's been evolving as I go. So, and it'll continue to evolve. So don't worry about that part. But there's some major things that people need to know and to realize and use and utilize that I'm going to be covering here. That's absolutely, this is immensely powerful stuff. And when you understand this stuff, when you get to the level of understanding and then you move through the levels and you get to knowing, this is absolutely one of the most important parts of life right here is dealing with emotion. This is the most important thing you'll ever know in your entire life. If you get this down, if you understand what I'm about to share with you, life changes drastically. It's amazing. It's so powerful. It's so useful. It's so helpful. And after you hear this, it might take time for it to sink in. Okay? This might be out of the paradigm that you're used to, that you know about, so if you've listened to me before, you're probably on the same wavelength as I am. If you're not and you've not listened to me, go back and listen. You're going to learn a lot of interesting and amazing things that can help change your life drastically. And this is by far one of the most, if not the most powerful tool that I'm giving you, is how to use and understand and utilize emotion in your life and what to do, especially when it comes to negative emotion. So powerful. I can't tell you enough. Also, if you're not subscribed already, subscribe. If you haven't left a comment or testimonial on, if you're on iTunes, go and review this podcast, review this, leave something there for other people to know that this is good information. Okay. I'm blown away that I'm actually sharing this information with you. And I really shouldn't give this information away until you rate this podcast. Until you do. This is amazing stuff. Okay, so I digress. Let's get into the show. Emotion. This is what makes us human. This grounds us or it drives us. Emotion is visceral. It is the part that, it's literally everything to who we are. We can't do anything. We don't make decisions in our life without emotion, period. Everything is predicated on emotion. Now, you can say, no, I'm a reasonable and rational thinker, and I always rationalize everything before I make a decision. Every rational decision you make is based upon a belief that you have, and those beliefs are built on emotion, period. Nothing in your life is not associated to emotion. There's not one thing that's not emotional in your life, okay? So now that we have that down, let's talk about how to deal with negative emotion, why you have to deal with negative emotion, why you have to deal with all emotion, not just negative, but all emotion, but especially negative, and why this is so important. First off, most people don't deal with emotions. 99% of people do not deal with their emotions, okay? Most people don't deal with their emotions. Now, I could be wrong and it might be 97%. Could be 95, but I guarantee you it's well into the 90s. Most people don't deal with their emotions. Why? A, they're afraid to feel. They're afraid to feel. They're afraid for several reasons. First off, they were taught not to feel. Feeling is bad. Don't express emotion, and you're fucked if you do. But then, guess what? You're fucked if you don't. And I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. You have to deal with all emotion all the time, and you should. Express emotion. So we fear it because we've been told it's bad. We should never do it. And the other part, too, is we don't want to look vulnerable or afraid, or we don't want to be looked upon as bad because we're sharing an emotion, because we're feeling an emotion. So our perception of other people's perception of us is vastly different, right? We care what others think about us when they don't care as much as we think they do. So you shouldn't care, but we do anyway. So let's talk about why emotion is powerful and why you should always share your emotion, why you should always feel the emotion. Okay, you should always feel the emotion because if you don't feel the emotion, here's what happens. We take this emotion that's momentary, right? Anger, despair, guilt, whatever, it's momentary. It doesn't have to last forever. So we feel the emotion, but when we don't feel the emotion, so I feel it coming on and I'm going to hide it. I'm going to hide the emotion. I don't want anyone to see that I feel guilty. I don't want anyone to know that I feel guilty. Oh, this sucks. So we're going to take this emotion that would normally, overcome our body for a short period of time. And we would have to express it then. And we don't want to. So we hide it. And we store it somewhere. What happens is all these emotions, depending on the level of the emotion, get stored somewhere. And they get stored in different places in our body. The reason why they get stored in different places in our body, because we don't have, it's like a backpack. If you have a backpack, you probably have like the laptop pocket. You probably have a pocket for pens, right? And different pens. You got different slots for different pens. For, if you're carrying your phone, you might have a spot for a phone, a water bottle. So you have different spots for things, right? Just like in your body. Your lungs aren't in your feet. Your lungs are in your chest, right? Next, and then you have your heart next to those, and right? And we have positions in our body for different organs, right? So same thing here. We have different like pockets where things go. So emotions get stored in different pockets inside of our body. And in the beginning, you don't see anything. There's nothing wrong. It's not obvious that guilt is being stored here or there, or fear's here or hatred's there. No, we don't know this stuff, right? You can't see it right away. But over the course of time, think about being out and about, and maybe you're at a restaurant having dinner, and you look around. You can see stuff on people's faces. You see weight on their faces. I can't, I'd love to say, how many know what I'm talking about? Okay, I'd love to say that, but I can't see you raising your hand or saying, I know what you're talking about. But you look around, you will see weight on people's faces. It's all over the place. It's all over not only their faces, but their body. You can see certain things about them. They have a limp, or they're overweight, or what have you. We store things in different areas of our body. So just like we store fat in different areas of our body, we store emotions also in those different areas. And so they appear on us differently, and they cause different things to us physically. In the beginning, you don't see it. It's not something you can look out and say, aha, I know you're guilty. They're going to be like, oh, what are you talking about? I said, I know you're guilty. They don't know. And you're not going to tell. But in the beginning, you're not going to be able to notice any of that. But over time, things weigh on us, and that weight becomes physical. It goes from emotional to physical. They transfer at some point in time because we hide it so often and so much. It eventually goes from this emotion to this physical ailment. And it happens all the time. All the time. I've talked about this before in other episodes. It happens all the time. But you don't know what you don't know. All you know is that you didn't want to feel that feeling at the time, and so you stored it away. And you hid it. And so what happens, the other part of this too, the in-between between it being stored and you seeing a physical ailment of it, is there's something that happens in between those two. And what happens in between those two is called acting out. Acting out. We act out because we're afraid to express an emotion. And so before it gets to showing up as a physical ailment, we act out. Okay? And how many of you know someone who's acted out before? Maybe it was you. I know I have, right? We've all done this. All of us are guilty of acting out. All of us are guilty of storing an emotion because we're afraid to be seen as vulnerable. All of us are. All of us are also guilty of having an ailment based on storing an emotion. So we're all guilty of all three of these things. It's about knowing that bridge. Knowing that bridge. The starting point and the end point and the in-between point. Knowing that there is this bridge of emotion that goes on. So we all do these things. Now that you know that these things happen, it's about finding out the emotion, dealing with the emotion, and expressing the emotion. Because when you express the emotion, you heal yourself. It's crazy. You can stop this like drinking or this acting out, whether it's like, sleeping around, what have you. You're dealing with it, right? So you're expressing it, and then you don't feel the need to do the acting out anymore. And then the other part too is when it's, you're sick of the psoriasis or you're sick of this ailment, you find out what it is that you're harboring inside of you that you haven't released. You release it. This usually deals with forgiveness, by the way. You release it, and forgiveness. So if you haven't heard that episode, go back and listen to my forgiveness episode. So you release it, and once you release it, guess what? You start to heal, and it happens so quickly. It's crazy how quickly this stuff happens. People look years younger after they figure this out and they release it. So you don't want to harbor your emotions. You want to release the emotions. You want to deal with the emotions. Now, what you want to do when it comes with dealing with the emotion or releasing the emotion. Okay. All right. So you feel guilty for something. You have to admit it. You have to. Now, you don't have to admit it in front of a million people, So if it's the wrong time in the wrong place, you don't have to admit it, but it's okay to. It certainly is. In fact, there's more power in admitting it than to keep it and hide it anyway. So how many of you are guilty of feeling guilty? I am. Certainly am. Many, many times. And so sometimes I don't realize that I'm guilty of something until situation's ended and I'm already home, and I'm like, oh, I can't believe I did that. And I talk about this before. I'll write an email, or I'll write a letter, and I'll release it that way, or I'll talk it through. I'll have an imaginary conversation with myself and whomever, and let it out. And even better is to express it to the person that you feel guilty, with or about. Express it to them. And if you're too embarrassed to do that, then you do the other. But let it out. You have to let it out. You have to express it. You have to feel it. Now, after you feel it, you have to let it go. You can't hold on to it. I got a friend who's told me several times now, like, oh, I feel this emotion. It's okay to let it play out. Yes, it's okay to let it play out, but it's not okay to let it hold on to you. You have to let it go. So if you can't let it go, there's no can't. You have to let it go. So if it's held on for a couple hours, it's probably okay to move on from that emotion and to find a way to move on from that emotion. So change your state, change your mind, change your attitude, change what you're doing, change who you're around, change something, but you have to change that. It's not okay, because what happens when you feel this guilt and it's holding on to you for so long, well, then guess what? It turns into other things. It turns into a lower emotional state, not a higher one. You have to do something to bump that emotion. Yes, you need to feel it, let it express itself, but after expressing itself, see, that's what happens when emotions show up. They express themselves, like laughter, like happiness. it expresses itself through laughter, right? And when you're done laughing, yes, you might be jolly and happy. And soon, sooner than later, that smile kind of goes away. And then you maybe find another expression of happiness and you laugh a bit more. But then it goes away, and then you receive a phone call from someone who you didn't want to talk to, and then now you're not smiling. So you go through, we ebb and flow through emotional states. When you stick in an emotional state, that's not good. You need to move from that emotional state. Now, obviously, if you stick in happiness, that's better than sticking in jealousy or hatred or depression or something like that, right? So the positive ones, yes, it's great that those stick and that we can keep those a little bit longer. And that's typically, and that what should be the goal. But with the negative ones, you want them to ebb and then flow. You want them to move away, or you move away from them rather, because it's easy to get stuck there. It's easy to stay there. It's super simple to do that, but you have to move through it. You can't just stick around with it. Then it becomes your friend, and then you're always like, it's like your comrade. And you always want to hang out with your best friend, don't you? Yeah, but when your best friend's depression, that's not a great place to stay. Or when your best friend's insecurity or jealousy or hatred, whatever, it's not a great place to stay there. So don't. You have to move from it. If it sticks, don't let it stick. You have to move. Okay? It's like baseball. You're not on first base the whole game. You have to remove yourself from it. Either you're moving to second or you get out. That's it. You have to move from it. We have to run the bases. All right? I mean, I could relate this to a million different things. If you're on your way from California to New York, you don't just sit at a stoplight, even though it's green, you continue to move. Yes, that red light stopped you for a short time, but you waited the long enough time. Now you have to move again. So move. So that's what this is all about. If you let it stick, it's going to produce negative results. Okay, this is negative emotion we're talking about here. Don't let it stick. Stick and move, right? Let it go, feel it, and then let it go, move. That's the important part here. And once again, when we don't do that, it turns into something you don't want it to. My mom, she's not here. So if you don't know my story, go back and listen to all the other episodes as I share plenty of this in there. My mom's not here. She's no longer here. So it was January 17th, 2017 that she passed. And when she passed, right, my mom passed, she had a lot of guilt. She had a lot of anger in her. She had a lot of hate in her. And she had fear in her. All these things, they produced cancer in her because she held on to them so tightly. She wouldn't let them go. She had cancer in her bowels. What is in your bowels? It's crap. When you don't let crap go, guess what it turns into? It eats away at you. Do you get that? There's a relationship between feelings and physical ailments always. And what do most of us do? We run to the doctor, help. Show me what medicine I can take to get the fuck out of this feeling that I have because I can't feel it. I don't want to feel it. I want to move from it. And that's BS. It's a load of crap. And when they get you on feeling this way, now you have this muted life. And when you live a muted life, guess what? Nothing is exciting anymore. It's just, it's ho-hum. But it's okay. You have the medicine to help you out. That is the cheap and easy way to get out of life. And that's what they're doing to everyone all the time. So I could share so many things that I absolutely love about our government, and that is absolutely one of them. If you go take meds because of that, maybe you need it. Maybe you do. But most people, I would say 97% of the population does not need that. They don't. People don't understand addiction. They think, it's crazy. We don't want to deal with emotion so much so that we become addicted to things. We let things take over who we are, so much so that we forget who we actually are as individuals, and that we think we need that in order to survive. And that's not the truth. we're afraid of feeling emotion. And because we're afraid of feeling the emotion, we find outlets for that emotion. And that's what takes over our life. So that's it, my friends. Let it out. All these emotional states equate to a level of vibration, a frequency. Everything is frequency. Everything is. Science proves this again and again and again and again. So if you feel a level of emotion that's negative, that frequency builds on itself by hiding it. And then it turns into something physical, where at first it's just energy. It then becomes physical because it's being harbored. You're holding it. And when you hold something, especially that's negative, that wants to be released, what does it do? It festers and it grows and grows and grows and grows and grows. It's exactly what it does. This is nothing new. I mean, maybe it's new to you now, but this is so invaluable, this information. This changes lives. If you feel that this information has been useful and helpful to you, share this out with other people. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. Get notified when new episodes come out. Leave feedback so others know about this. It's David Dubé with Only One You Need Radio. It's time that you be the person you're meant to be, believe in all that you're capable of, and become more than you thought imaginable. I look forward to catching you on the next episode.